All right, guys, I hope you all have been enjoying the preseason, all the hype. Unfortunately, a little too many injuries for my taste. We never root for injuries here on this channel. But apart from that, I think it's time for another mock draft. And with the ever-increasing popularity of the Superflex format, I think it's time for us to throw a little twist and do a Superflex mock draft for you all, kind of show you how I would approach that draft. So as always, like the video, comment down below what your strategies are for Superflex. Subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and I'll see you on the other side of that intro. Welcome back into Twin Takes Fantasy Football. Today doing a Superflex mock draft for the 2023 Fantasy Football redraft season. A couple of little things that I want to point out before I go through this mock draft. I do, in practicing for this, even for these mock drafts, I like to prep for these videos, so I'm not just sitting here stuttering, figuring out what I'm going to do. I actually like to do a few mock drafts before I come in and do these videos, so I kind of can speak a little bit more eloquently, but, in order to help me through these mock drafts, even though they're not, they're very inconsequential for real life, I still use my tier-based drafts. So those videos that I put out last week, the week before, and the week prior to that, kind of highlighting where I rank my wide receivers, where I rank my running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, all those tiered rankings. That's information that I genuinely use. I have it pulled up on my screen right here to my left that you cannot see. But when I am faced with decisions, I go to those tiered rankings and see where do I have those guys evaluated, what tiers they fall into, and that's how I end up making a lot of my decisions. And it helps me, stay level-headed, helps me not tilt during drafts, and ultimately leaves me a little bit feeling better as I come out of these drafts. So it's not just information I yeet out into the void for the sake of creating content. It's actually genuinely stuff that I use and believe in. So hopefully it gives you a little more confidence to believe in that information as well. And the last thing I want to mention before going into the Superflex mock draft is the slight alteration in positional values. Yes, quarterback way more valuable, and you'll see that with probably 7 or 8 quarterbacks going in the first round here. But I want to talk about the tight end position. Pretty controversial position when it comes to fantasy football. I know a lot of people love grabbing tight ends early. They think, getting one of those top 2 guys, and Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, gives you that positional advantage. However, when we look at, the basic setup of Superflex mock drafts, the percentage of points you're getting from the tight end position are devalued. I'm not going to go into super detailed about, weighting different positions and weighting the wide receiver versus weighting the quarterback and whatnot. But if we want to break it down just generally, standard leagues, if you're going to go for one quarterback, are a start 9 league, and out of that, only one position is tight end. So you're getting about 12% of your fantasy points from the tight end position. Now, when it comes to Superflex leagues, you're typically not subtracting a running back, not subtracting wide receivers, not subtracting your flex position. So you're just throwing on an extra quarterback position to the end there, an extra Superflex position availability on the end. So now those leagues generally are start 10 or start 11 if you are going to go for the multiple flexes or maybe start 3 wide receivers. So ultimately, because you're starting more players, it's going to devalue the position of the tight end, because I have yet to see a league in which you can they force you to start more than one tight end. So it's basically 1 out of 9 versus 1 out of 10 at the very, very basic bare minimum math. So it's almost 2% less of what those points are counting towards your total overall for your weekly fantasy points. And while that might not sound like a lot over the course of a season, I promise you it does add up. And obviously you can talk about, positional weighting, and if you want to, that percentage of 2% is going to actually increase quite a bit if you want to weight the wide receiver position a little bit more, weight the running back position a little bit more, because you are actually starting 3 to 4 of those guys a week in a Superflex league. So with that little diatribe out of the way, you will never see me take Travis Kelce in the first round in a Superflex league. You will never see me take Mark Andrews in the second round of a Superflex league. And frankly, in all of my leagues, I have been very prone to punting that position. Not even my favorite boy, Dallas Goedert, in the 6th round. I still kind of shy away from taking him there, just because I know I can get sufficient value from the tight end at the very end of the draft with those Irv Smiths, with those Dalton Schultz, with those Hayden Hursts. And while those other positions that are weighted more, I need to address those early on in the draft. And so that's just my strategy. Is I never, ever, ever take tight end high in Superflex drafts for those reasons I just laid out before. But without further ado, let's jump into the actual draft. Again, Superflex is going to be fun. Sleeper, if I don't choose a spot, it's going to randomly assign one. So let's have it randomly assign me a spot, and I will be right smack dab in the middle at the 106. Should put me in a good position to take a quarterback. And one of my favorite quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson. That's a very, very easy pick, especially in Superflex League. I do have belief that Lamar was going to come out and explode in this revamped Todd Monken offense. Again, I expect the injury history to go down because, his injuries in the past, they've been injuries that, well, let's just say they get worse without a contract being behind you. So with the increased passing ability, with the investment from the Ravens front office into the weapons around him, I think Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are poised for a monstrous offensive season. This one's tough. Frankly, Austin Eckler should not be here. And that's some of the things that you have to deal with some of these mock drafts is there's no shot on planet Earth that someone's taking Saquon Barkley over Austin Eckler. So as much as I preach wide receivers, I preach that. But again, we talked about our tier-based rankings. Austin Eckler is in that top tier with Christian McCaffrey. I just don't think it's going to be fair to you or to myself to take Austin Eckler here in the second round. There's no chance. None of you would let him fall to the 207. Even in a Superflex league, you're not taking him over. You're not taking Deshaun Watson over Austin Eckler. So I think I have to be true to what I think reality is going to pitch to me, and that's where I'm going to go with my number 6 wide receiver. Again, top of tier 2, a guy that I really think is poised for a breakout, a guy that I think is going to be a top 3. Has a top 3 upside from the wide receiver position. That's going to be CeeDee Lamb. Trust me, I would have loved Austin Eckler. I would have loved him, but I promise you it would have only been a disservice because there's no way in actual reality Austin Eckler would be there in the second round. So, sometimes those are those things you have to think about in the mock drafts where you're like, this would be great if it happened, but it's probably not going to happen. Again, here we're faced with a conundrum. Do I take Mark Andrews here? No. It's a very easy no for me just because I still have to have 2 running backs. I still need another wide receiver. I still need to flex, and I still need another super flex position. And again, with how I think super flex quietly devalues the tight end position, I just don't want to throw anything out here at Mark Andrews. So, with Josh Jacobs, he's definitely a guy I would target here. With, again, a lot of positive news coming out of the camp that he's going to return, but he still hasn't returned. A lot of concerns around him, they're confident that he'll be back for the start of the season, but he still isn't in Las Vegas. So right now, it's quite easy for me to, again, look at some of these wide receivers down the board that I like a lot more and see, again, I've preached us all offseason the fact that there's so much value in the running back position in the 3rd and 4th round. I'm very happy punting that position. Guys like Najee Harris, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Walker, guys that I'm really happy with down the board. So right now, for me, it's either Jalen Waddle or DK Metcalf. Again, with the fact that when we saw the injury from JSN, I think it bumps up DK Metcalf's value quite a bit. There is some concern around Jalen Waddle. So yeah, I am going to go ahead and reach for my guy. I do have DK Metcalf ranked in my top 10 wide receivers, a little bit ahead of Jalen Waddle. I don't think this, if I was towards the end of the 3rd round and maybe I thought he would fall to me in the 4th round, maybe I'd go there. But I don't think DK Metcalf is going to fall. I think he has a guy that has top 6, top 7 wide receiver finish potential on the season. So I'm going to reach a little bit. I'm going to take my guy in DK Metcalf, put my money where my mouth is. Again, and also, if Tua had fallen to me, that might have been a little bit more of a discussion. But at this point, I think, we can find a very serviceable backup quarterback. Some of those guys that I've talked about, like a Jordan Love, like a Jared Goff, guys that, or like maybe even a Geno Smith, guys that finished top 10 of the position, minus Jordan Love. I'm just projecting for him. But Jared Goff and Geno Smith, guys that finished top 10 of the position last season that I can get at a very, very good value. But right now, I see Daniel Jones, I see Anthony Richardson, I see Geno Smith. I just have so many options that I like as a QB2 that I really want to get a guy that I have faith in at the running back position, a guy that I talked about in my Keep It Simple Stupid video just a couple days ago. That I don't understand why so many people are fading Najee Harris. He's one of the true, last remaining true workhorse backs. We know how Mike Tomlin values those running backs, and I know there's a ton of hype around there's a ton of hype around Jaylen Warren coming in and his efficiency and yards per route run. But again, we talked about this. Keep it simple. Don't dive into these advanced metrics. Let's go and just analyze the basic facts that Najee Harris was a guy that's wildly productive, has had a top 4 finish. I think that was his rookie season at the running back position. He was a guy that, still played very well despite having a broken foot and playing with a plate in his shoe for the first half of last season. And once he got that plate out from week 10 onwards, he was the running back 6 over those last 7 games. So I think with the whole build, the picket fence, reinforcing that offensive line with Broderick Jones, with Isaac Seumalo, with Kenny Pickett advancing in his sophomore season, I think Najee Harris will greatly outperform his ADP here. Right now, I don't like the running backs here, and I think I can wait and take a guy that has a lot of value here in the 5th round. But it's going to come down between Anthony Richardson and Jared Goff. Again, I know you have the upside of Anthony Richardson, but it's still quite the projection. And again, if I had maybe more of a safer quarterback, if I had maybe a Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, or a Josh Allen, I might be more inclined to take the risk on a Anthony Richardson. But I have to evaluate my team as a whole, evaluate the strengths and weaknesses that my team present to me. And Lamar Jackson, while I think, he's going to have a great season, there still is that injury concern. He hasn't played a full season in the past 3 years. I think I do, just for the sake of my team, need to err on the side of caution and err with a little bit of a safer quarterback. We have joked endlessly about the times that this channel is going to be renamed to the Ben Johnson fan club of how much I support and like what they're doing up there in Detroit with the offense, with the weapons they have added. And again, the guy that's going to be manning the helm, the captain of that ship, is going to just be the beneficiary of it. He might not have, the upside of a Tua or the rushing upside of an Anthony Richardson, but he's a guy that's going to come in, week out, give you 25 points. I don't think is a very insane metric for Jared Goff to hit coming into the second year in that offense. I think he's a great quarterback for this team. It has a little bit more of a risk appetite, taking Lamar Jackson in the 1st. Right now, again, taking Miles Sanders one pick right before me. That stings, because that's the guy that I really, really wanted at this position. Again, we could take Dallas Goedert here in the 6th round, but it's still a point where there's so many good wide receivers and running backs left on the board that it's not really something that I'm willing to, make that move for just yet. This is, again, if it was Miles Sanders here, gosh, why? This team did not need a running back. That's bizarre. They should have gone for a wide receiver. This team 7, must be off the rails with their draft strategy. Maybe they just wanted to screw me over. But Miles Sanders, gosh, that would have been such a perfect pick right here. But right now, I think I'm going to go for another wide receiver. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to play the ADP game. I'm going to see if James Conner gets back to me. If he doesn't, I will be just vastly disappointed. But we can go and we can, supplement that pick. There's a lot of good running backs down the board with Javonte Williams, how good he looked in the preseason. I think he's going to be my backup if James Conner doesn't make it to me. So again, Drake London or Christian Watson. If I'm going to actually bet on the upside of, Jordan Love taking that step in his rookie season, I think with how good of a pass coordinator Matt LaFleur is and what an offensive mind he is, I'm going to take that shot. It's the first time I've drafted Christian Watson in a draft, but you bet on the breakout of second-year wide receivers. You want to really bet on that jump, and it's between Drake London and Christian Watson for me here, but with Christian Watson's touchdown upside and just the fact that a little bit trepidatious surrounding Drake London, despite how talented he is. And if we come down to a pure talent standpoint, yes, Drake London is way more talented than Christian Watson, but that passing offense is going to be absolutely abysmally small in Atlanta. They're going to draft that entire offense surrounding Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier is going to have a huge workload after he was very productive as a rookie with over 1,000 yards. So I'm going to take that shot. I have 2 guys that I think are really, really safe at the wide receiver position, and CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf. So I'm okay taking a very, very, very risky pick here in the 6th round on Christian Watson. And you know what? James Conner, he was taken. That's totally fine because we have our backup already lined up. It's going to be Javonte Williams, especially with the injury news of Jerry Jeudy being carted off of practice just this morning, I think it's only going to drive Javonte Williams' stock up. He's been one of the biggest preseason risers for me coming into the game, looking very, very strong throughout the game. He did pass the eye test where you look at guys, maybe they're a little bit trepidatious. It's a lot of a big, major mental hurdle to overcome coming back from a severe injury like that. But Javonte looks very strong, both physically and mentally, willing to put a lot of weight into his knee. And I think, he showed some prowess in the pass catching game with Jerry Jeudy out for what we can potentially see for at least half the season with how bad that injury looked. I'm no doctor, but I'm just making a guess here. I'm very, very thrilled with taking Javonte here in the 7th round as my running back too. Let's see how it's going to last. Marquise Brown would have loved him. Jordan Love would have loved him as my 3rd. Would love to get the stack with Christian Watson. Certainly was something I was targeting. Didn't know if this team was going to come back, but it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you play the ADP game, and I've lost both times, both James Conner and Jordan Love, but it's okay. There's still so much value to be had down the board. And right now, what do we need to reinforce? Do we need to reinforce our wide receiver position, or do we need to reinforce our running back position? There's 2 great options here, both of which I don't think are going to be available when it comes around to the next pick. We have Mike Evans, a guy who has had 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons. This guy is the epitome of production when it comes to the wide receiver position. Last season was the first one you were a little bit disappointed with, but how can you just be disappointed with a 1,000-yard season from a wide receiver? Again, I do want to factor in that this is a start 2 wide receivers, and there are some guys down the board. We look at guys like Jahan Dotson or Zay Flowers that I think could actually have a very equal production to Mike Evans, and I do want to take my shot on David Montgomery. Again, we talked about this again in the Keep It Simple Stupid video just 2 days ago, where if he's slotting into Jamal Williams' role, he was running back 8 last season because he had just an insane touchdown upside. Again, we are the Ben Johnson fan club here on Twin Takes Fantasy Football. Jahmyr Gibbs, I love him as a prospect. This is not an anti-Jahmyr Gibbs take. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be used more as a pass catching weapon and more as a scat back out of the backfield, lining up in the slot position maybe. And, the guy's going to have the touchdown upside, the between the tackles rushing yards, the volume of touches out of the backfield is going to be David Montgomery. And I think it's a very, very sneaky pick and a very, very valuable pick here in the 8th round. So I'm going to go there with Dave Montgomery. And of course, Mike Evans goes right after that. It was a great deciding between the 2 of those. Right here, we have Matthew Stafford. We have Kyler Murray. I think, I have my 2 main quarterbacks. I don't really need to go and reach for a 3rd round quarterback. I do just want to keep reinforcing my skill position players, a lot more injury prone, a lot more come and go, a lot more bye weeks I have to deal with just because of the volume of the positions with 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex that I got to start week in and week out. And again, with Jahan Dotson, I am shocked that maybe this is just ADP that hasn't caught up to him, but here in the 9th round, especially with the turf toe that Terry McLaurin is dealing with, Jahan Dotson is a smash prospect for me. Taking him here in the 9th round is an absolutely no-brainer. And again, I feel very, very confident about my running back and wide receiver room. I have 4 amazing wide receivers. I have 3 amazing running backs, in my opinion. So now I can just take what I think is the best value left on the board. So we come through here. We have a Zay Flowers. We have a Khalil Herbert. Both guys that I think are going to be absolutely dominant. But listen, you win with upside. You win with the stack. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. He's not getting back to me in the 11th round, and I want to see if he truly can break out in his rookie season. That stack is going to be absolutely juicy with Lamar Jackson. So I'm going to go right there. And it's also the 11th round. I did cut off quite a bit of bench positions. Kind of forgot about that. Just to keep this draft a little bit short. Didn't want to go too long going into the 14th, 15th round guys that are probably just going to get dropped regardless as it comes to the week 1, right before week 1, right here, 11th, 10th, 11th round. This is where, you have guys that are going to still have a little bit of a value, but after this, Courtland Sutton's actually a really good drop off for me, where I think, after Courtland Sutton, there really isn't much to talk about. I think you're really grasping at straws. The dart throws are being thrown from 50 feet away, and hitting a bullseye is going to be more of a luck rather than skill at that point. So I think at this point, I'm going to take my wide receiver or take my tight end here in the very last round. Dalton Kincaid. Again, we've talked about how historically tight ends are, don't produce as rookies, but with tied to one of the most dynamic and explosive offenses in the Buffalo Bills, tied to Josh Allen as a fantasy quarterback, seeing that he's stepping into, that secondary pass catcher role, trying to make up for what Gabe Davis could not produce last season. And there was no real wide receiver talent added outside of Dalton Kincaid. I'm actually willing to take the bet on him as a rookie. So right there, I'm taking Dalton Kincaid as my last pick. Obviously in a normal draft, we would have more positions. If I wanted to go to my next two rounds, round 12 and round 13, round 12, I'm taking a real shot on a quarterback here. Again, I have my guys that I'm starting in and week out. And really, I only need a guy that's going to come in on bye weeks. So I'm looking at a guy like Sam Howell, really proved himself throughout the preseason, looks really good in that offense. Again, tied to an offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, who has led the most prolific passing attack for the past 3 years with Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City. Yes, I understand there's the Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes factor, but it's still a great offensive mind. And a guy that is very talented, maybe a little bit raw as a quarterback prospect, but Sam Howell is a guy that, as a third quarterback in a super flex, I quite like a lot. I'm willing to take him here in the 11th, 12th, 13th round. And after this, I have quite a bit of depth at the wide receiver and running back position. So, this is where I'm taking those guys, those dart throws at tight ends, those Irv Smiths, those Hayden Hursts, just to back up in case Dalton Kincaid doesn't pan out. I think I can get adequate production from those guys really far down the board. And, it really does feel like, as I look over this roster, I feel fantastic. I feel very validated in taking a quarterback first. Sometimes people say, in Superflex, let other people take the quarterbacks, but that quarterback well, it dries up quickly. So having Lamar Jackson captain this team, something I'm a very, very big fan of. Having Dalton Kincaid as my tight end, and then imagining that I have Hayden Hurst and Irv Smith on this roster, I feel great about it because I have a very dynamic running back room. I have some of the best wide receivers in the league. I think I might have the best wide receiver room in this entire league. AJ Brown, Amari Cooper, and Justin Jefferson definitely is something to contend with. But very happy with Jahan Dotson, Zay, CD, and DK. And then I think I have there's not going to be a tremendous upside from my running back room, but these are guys that are going to come in, week out, solid 30 points between Najee and Javonte. The guys that they're never going to lose me a week, and I feel very confident about that. And then I also have David Montgomery. If something happens to one of them, a guy that I think I can rotate in and be a very, very low-end running back too that can slot in there if I need. If Christian Watson doesn't pan out the way I think he's going to pan out and such. So, again, after I come through this draft, I'm very, very happy with how this Superflex turned out. I think, just going through this, I feel validated in what I've said before the draft with punting the tight end position. So it allows me to stack up a lot at the quarterback and the other skill position players. So that's obviously one of the biggest takeaways, but hopefully this kind of gave you some insight into how I view this league, gives you a good idea how Superflex drafts pan out and how some of the guys like Jahan Dotson and Zay Flowers, they fall a little bit more as people try to target a Kenny Pickett over them, which, I wouldn't be taking Kenny Pickett over them, but to each their own. I'm sure there's some Steelers fans out there who think he's the next coming of Ben Roethlisberger. But until then, I hope you all enjoy. Looking forward to all the preseason games this weekend, the last one before actual football starts. So you all enjoy, and I'll see you for the start of the season. Take care.